Well, welcome everybody. Welcome everybody to Dixie State University. We're glad you're here, and we're especially glad that all our candidates are here. If we can give them a round of applause to get us started. My name is Henry Walton. I'm the director of the Institute of Politics and Public Affairs at Dixie State University, and again, we want to welcome you all to campus. The candidates forum tonight is going to be co-hosted by a few different groups. The Institute of Politics. We've got some fantastic students here who have helped us plan this event and put everything together, and they've put a lot of time into it. In addition to that, we've got the St. George Area Chamber of Commerce here. We've got Greg and Pam here representing, and we're very grateful for their help, as well as the Utah Foundation. And the Utah Foundation is going to be moderating for us tonight. I'm going to toss it over to Stephen Cruz, the president of the Utah Foundation. He's going to give a little bit more information on the kinds of questions we'll be asking, the format tonight, and from there we'll pass it to Dan Baumas, our moderator, and we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for being here.
We'll direct the first question to the candidate on the far left and work our way down. Second question directed to the second candidate. If we have applause and demonstrations and hooting and hollering, slows things down, okay? And so please, let's kind of keep some decorum, and certainly ask the candidates and others to maintain a high level of civility, directing your thoughts toward the audience rather than your opponent. And I may follow up briefly or ask for clarifying comments if we find that necessary. With that in mind, let's start with Dorothy Engelman, who is the Democrat running for the Utah State Senate in District 29. And a 60-second opening statement about why you're running and what you're hoping to accomplish.
Great. Is this on? Yes. I'm Dorothy Engelman. As he said, I'm running for District 29. My voice is a little weak today, but it doesn't have anything to do with my passion or enthusiasm for what I'm running. My doctor told me to stop talking, and I just said that's not going to happen. As you can tell, I'm different from the other candidates sitting here, and I'd like to pass these paydays for the gentlemen sitting to all of the gentlemen sitting to my left, which have a little message on them, and some of you may have received the same thing. I think it's time for a new voice and a different voice from Southern Utah, and from someone who is looking at it from a perspective of change, trying new things, looking for alternative solutions. Many of the people sitting in the legislature have been there for a while, and I think it's time to bring a representative from Southern Utah to the clock is all screwy. How much time do I really have?
You're out of time. We've run through 60 seconds. Thank you. Senator Ipson, just recently appointed to the state senate, filling Senator Urquhart's vacant position. 60 seconds.
Thank you. I'm honored to fill this Senate seat with the departure of Senator Urquhart. He moved out of the seat, and I was lucky enough to be appointed to that seat and appointed by the governor. I'm excited to move to the Senate after spending 8 years in the House. I think I have a very good working relationship with members of the Senate. I've been able to, as a House member, I was able to pass and sponsor some House legislation for senators in the Senate, including some of my Democratic colleagues from across the aisle. And I've worked hard to create a relationship across the aisle, and I do have a good working relationship in both the House and the Senate with those people. I'm honored to serve the people, and I've been there for 8 years, and I would like the opportunity to go back and spend some time in the Senate. Thank you.
Our Utah Priorities Project survey showed that everybody is unhappy with the health care issue right now. Liberals are upset that Utah didn't expand Medicaid to help more low-income individuals. Conservatives are disappointed with Obamacare. Everybody's mad about the rising cost of health insurance. So what can the state do about health care policy, and what would be your health policy priorities in the legislature? 60 seconds.
Thank you. You know, during the last legislative session, we put together a compromise bill that dealt with Medicaid expansion with the most vulnerable of those in our society. And I believe that was a good step forward. One of the things that we can't do is full Medicaid expansion it absolutely is not sustainable. We're not able to put the full program forward. The Obamacare thing has made it virtually impossible. The health insurance has become out of reach for many, and that's made it worse. We put that program together, and we've been able to provide the health care, the essential health care for the most vulnerable part of our society. And I think it's been a big help to move that forward.
Ms. Engelman.
Thank you. I think it's interesting that one of the reasons that Utah has said that it didn't want to expand Medicaid was because they weren't sure that the money from the federal government would be there. I think it's interesting that when we look at our $14.2 billion state budget, and 26% of that budget comes from federal money, and it doesn't seem like we worry about that money being there the next day. I think that if we had expanded Medicaid when we first could, we would have covered many more people in the ensuing 3 years, and we would have something in place. The governor had the opportunity to expand Medicaid. He chose not to. I think the other thing when we look at health care is we need to look at the profits that insurance companies are making. And one of the reasons why so many health insurance companies pulled out of supporting the Affordable Care Act. The other thing is that health care is directly tied to our air quality. And I know that we'll address that later.
I can remind you too that some of these questions I have for you are based on Utah Foundation research. And among the things that we have determined in our work is that Utahns have enjoyed a significant tax cut in the past decade. In fact, someone making $50,000 a year is now paying $700 less in state income taxes than they were 10 years ago, but all of that reduction has come out of the public education budget. Other state agencies have remained flat or even increased. The voters also consistently express concern about education funding in surveys. Is Utah's public education funding adequate? And if not, what would you do to ensure adequacy? And Ms. Engelman, you have the first stab at this one.
Thank you. I think at some point when we say that we give tax cuts and yet people still expect full services is a little unrealistic. And I guess whenever I think of taxes, I think of Donald Trump right now. But I don't think that we need to look at finding additional ways of bringing income in. I had a very staunch Republican suggest to me that we need to really think in very, very different ways by looking at who's making the most money that has disposable income. And he went back to athletes and said, maybe we can look at something like they're doing in Las Vegas with, and I can't remember the gentleman's name now, that has adopted several schools. I think we need to be very creative. And I think we need to be careful giving money to K through 12 versus spreading our education dollars out through higher ed. I think that that's been a problem.
Senator Ribs.
Thank you. You have to remember when you talk about income tax being cut, all income tax goes to fund education. It does not use for another single thing. And in the past 2 legislative sessions, we've put almost $1 billion of new money into education. We funded complete growth. We funded additional money the weighted pupil unit. And we've done that out of other sources as well as the income tax. All income tax goes to fund education. It doesn't go to another single purpose. And we're all committed to make it. Undoubtedly, it's not funded well enough. But again, you got to balance the budget, and we got to live within our means. And we have to do that, and we do that.
All right.
May I have a rebuttal?
If you could give me 10
Real quick.
seconds.
Real quick.
Okay.
Because one of the problems in Utah is the number of children we have, I think something we can look at is limiting the number of deductions on our state income taxes, so that those people who are having more children are putting more money into our schools.
Since 2004, so let's talk about that. The economy has been creating a lot of jobs in Utah. We're among the best states in the nation for job growth. But voters continue to say in surveys that they're concerned about the quality of jobs available to them or to their children. So what can be done to ensure the growth of high-quality, high-paying jobs in this region of the state? And Ms. Engelman.
Thank you. We need to bring in different kinds of jobs. I think it also goes to show that when we talk about being a well-managed state, which is something that many Republicans tout, that we're the best managed state, we also have to look at that St. George is the second worst paying metropolitan area out of 148 in the nation. We don't have a state minimum wage here. Minimum wage is $7.25. If we're going to bring in jobs that will bring higher paying jobs in, we have to look at tech jobs. We have to look at making this area, and specifically Washington County, more attractive to people such as millennials that are coming in and people who want to be involved in a growing community but are willing to come in with and look at new jobs. We don't need more distribution centers.
Go ahead. The question is providing high-quality, high-paying jobs for this region of Utah.
You know, one of the things is we're in the process of building a new applied technology center, but I'm going to tell you, one of the things that's hard, when the economy went down, people started to go back to school, they started to go get trained. The economy is so hardly driven right now that employers cannot find adequate employees at any price to fill the jobs that they have. And the training, the people need to make themselves available for training, they need to get better educated, and the minimum wage does not apply in Washington County. We're far above that, and the problem is for our employers and to drive the economy is finding an adequate number of employees to fill those jobs.
One of our audience members puts it this way: why should Washington County taxpayers have to foot the multi-billion-dollar bill, that's their estimate of the cost, for the Lake Powell pipeline? And so the broader question is it necessary? Is it important? Is it practical? And I'm sorry, I can only give you 60 seconds if we get through everyone here, but I'm going to start with Senator Ipson.
You know, the Lake Powell pipeline has been a political football for decades. And we still don't have the environmental part of it done, so we don't know what the cost really is. The water right in the upper Colorado is ours. We need to get control of it. As far as the financing of it, it'll be a statewide initiative that will, to help cover the cost of that. It will be a statewide initiative that's been proposed and passed legislation that will put a quarter or a partial cent sales tax into that, and we've got to be creative on how we do that. And the cost of water will be bear into that, the taxes, but it will not be totally on the backs of the developers and the people of Washington County. It will be a statewide initiative.
And Ms. Engelman.
I'm firmly against the Lake Powell pipeline. We've never tried real, true conservation here. I think that we need to start with some local initiatives that have teeth in them. I think when we look at SB 80 that was passed last year, which took part of our transportation tax, the increased gas tax, and put it into a fund to fund Lake Powell pipeline. When I was in school, oil and water didn't mix, and I'm surprised that we took that out. Before we even think about spending money on the Lake Powell pipeline, there are many other options that need to be looked at before we ever get close to it. I also think it's real important that the water district is making this decision and they have no responsibility to answer to the citizens of this state.
All right, go ahead. Senator Ipson.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify one thing. The Senate bill that dealt with moving the money to start to fund the Lake Powell pipeline.
81, I think it was.
Yeah.
Is it 81 rather than 80?
Yeah. Anyway, that did not come out of transportation funds. The gas tax transportation money is earmarked for maintenance of roads. And that money was earmarked for out of sales tax, and it was transferred to the state water projects. It wasn't even earmarked for Lake Powell. It was the Bear River and Lake Powell will be considered together. That's where they come from. Come out of the sales tax issue.
Ms. Engelman, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you if you're not done. Ms. Engelman, do you have some thoughts on that?
No, I'd rather get to some of the other questions. Thank you.
What do you have to say to millennial voters who don't think their voice or vote matters in this election? And one of the things that we discussed in that area was that here in Utah, one of the reasons people give for not voting is that there's a one-party dominance that makes them feel as though if they have a different opinion than the prevailing party, typically their voice is not heard. How can we assure these young voters who are trying to sign up here today that their voice will be heard? And let's go with Ms. Engelman first. It's your turn.
Best way is to vote for people who are willing to listen to them. I have many, many ways of doing that, and I have reached out and have attended several of the Pizza and Politics, and so I'm here to talk to people. When we look at the number of women who vote is decreasing, it's dropped tremendously over the last 30 years. We need to make those young people realize that by casting a ballot, they do have choices, that all of the candidates that are on the ballot are not the same, and that their voice can make a difference. If those millennials who are uncomfortable with what's happening in the state of Utah and will go out and vote for me, I guarantee you that they will be heard and that I will take their voice to Salt Lake City. You have to vote to have change. That's the only thing you can say.
Senator Ipson.
You know, I think the millennials, and I don't know that they're much different than lots of other people. They get discouraged with what they see in the national politics. I think that our state politics and our state legislature, I think the governor's office is well run. You know, I indicated in my opening remarks, I have an exceptionally good relationship with my Democratic counterparts across the aisle. I've worked with them to help pass some of their legislation, and they've worked with me to help with mine. I think that the bipartisan politics, the Clean Air Caucus that we're working on, Representative Snow is a co-chair of, is a major part of that. We work together across the aisle to make that work, and we've passed some good legislation to help with that.
Someone shooting off fireworks. Give everyone a final statement.
Thank you. You know, I remember when I was first elected to the legislature, and I went to leadership elections, and it was just dusk in Salt Lake, and the lights had come on the Capitol building, and I remember the rush of reverence that I felt, and that's never gone away. Every time I drive in that building, in the parking lot, I feel the obligation to the people that I represent. I commit to you that I will be accessible, and I think I always have been. I spent 8 years there. I've developed relationships that I can continue to work on. I'm overwhelmed with the trust that you've placed in me in the 8 years that I've represented you in District 75. I'm committed to you to go and represent you the very best that I can. Thank you.
And Ms. Engel.
The best for last? No.
Well, just move in one direction or the other.
I'm probably one of the newest residents sitting up here. My husband and I have lived here for 8 years, and I think I have a special ear for those people who are new residents, who have chosen to come here and have other ideas and want to hear their voices listened to in the legislature. I've worked in the nonprofit field ever since I got here, and I think I listen to different people than maybe some of those that the folks sit here. The people I work with are not the fat cats of the community. They're people who are in need, and they need to be listened to. What my slogan is, together we can make a difference, and I truly believe that. I need your vote. Clicking these red shoes will not get me elected, no matter what they did for Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. I have to have your vote to get elected. And I also want to have something in common with Martha Hughes Cannon, who, my maiden name was Hughes. She was the very first woman elected to the Utah State Senate in 1896. And I want to be the very first woman elected from Southern Utah to the Utah Senate. And I will with your vote. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Let's give our legislators and candidates a hand, please. For the time that they've spent here, and the rockets, glitter, and bombs bursting in air while we're involved in this. Thanks again on behalf of the Utah Foundation. We are delighted to have joined you here today for some of this program and the new Institute of Politics here at Dixie State University. It's been our pleasure and our delight to be working with you, and believe me, we feel just a real privilege in having been able to come to St. George and be part of this today. Thank you very much.